That takes care of that. Now let's start the show. Shortbox Nation, without further ado, let's welcome the man behind Radiant Black and the Massiverse. Let's welcome Kyle Higgins to the show. What up, Kyle? How you doing? Welcome to the Shortbox.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
Out of breath, a little sick.
That's a
still.
long intro.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
long
definitely
intro.
it's definitely a long way to try to make it through in one foul swoop. But for you, man,
That's a long intro without a cold.
Thank you. That is true. Can I go ahead and give you props and maybe an award at that? Maybe the first ever Shortbox award of its kind.
Oh,
You might have the nicest video quality and sound quality of any guest I've ever had. So thank you for coming correct on the AV side of things.
you are welcome. We were talking about this just before we started recording, but yeah, I worked in post production for many years, and I was a sound editor for like 10 years or something like that, and between college and then after college before I was writing comics full time. But with the amount of stuff we do now in audio, whether it's the No One audio series that we did or the big Radiant Black Audiobook, I've just felt like, you know what, I'm going to get everybody the same gear. So like our core team all has the same mic setups.
Oh, nice.
So that anyone can record scratch audio in at any point into any of the projects. But also like I'm set up so like someone can come over and record here if need be, like an actor or something like that. I would booth it off more and everything, but yeah. And then we've done enough live streams where the video looked so awful. And it's like, I come from a filmmaking background. Like I can't, like I've worked in post for all these years. Like my stuff cannot look this bad. Like, come on, we got to do something about this. So I got my DSLR mounted up here. So
nice. Now you look good.
I'm glad it's coming through smooth.
No, it's coming in good. So I guess I say all that to say, listeners of the show, if you want to check out the video, it's well worth it because you get to see Kyle in like 4D, maybe even 5D. It's that crisp.
We
But
got
Kyle,
some cool helmets over here too.
oh yeah, no, the
I don't know if
framing
you can
and
see them.
yeah, the framing in the background look great. Kyle, before we talk Radiant Black, I want to ask, how was India? I understand that you traveled to Chennai, I think is how you say it, for 6 days for Comic-Con India.
Yeah, we went to Chennai.
Chennai, okay.
Yeah, it was Marcelo Costa, Eduardo Ferragato, myself, and Kelly McMahon, and it was amazing. The convention was publishing Radiant Black #1 for convention goers, and it was something like 250,000 copies or something crazy. And so they were interested in bringing us out to help support, and we said absolutely. So yeah, it was amazing. We only got one real full day to explore, but we had a full day. I think we drove hour and a half outside the city and got into some really cool cultural stuff, and then some local spots for different meals. Had pretty incredible fish on the beach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite a trip.
So I guess how was the reception to Radiant Black? I guess, and even maybe like just, I guess, is there an appetite? Excuse the pun, an appetite for superhero comics out there like that?
Yeah, huge superhero appetite. Lot of interest in all the Marvel, movies and everything on that front. But then comics wise, yeah, I mean, I had many conversations with superhero fans, kind of all ages, talking about not only Radiant Black, some of whom had already read it, but others who were just interested in talking about Batman and different superheroes of our kind of, of our industry. I don't know how easy it is to get comics.
I was just wondering that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I know things can be ordered online and shipped and things like that. So for us, it was about bringing this book to a whole other kind of area of the world and just introducing, a whole bunch more people to the material and the universe, the publishing line we've got going. So that's kind of one of our biggest pushes right now and focuses is on raising general awareness now that we have a significant enough back catalog that like people can really find and then get immersed into the universe. So as we do more ads and kind of marketing towards general awareness, and like you see all the promos that like Will Friedle and Rider Strong do with us, and Johnny Young Bosch, a lot of that is coming now because I feel like we have, you know, a strong enough footprint that like we can start getting the word out a bit more.
Kyle, do you have a time machine? Because I'm trying to figure out how you cram all this stuff in a regular 24-hour day. I mean, you went to Comic-Con India. That's not even accounting
Hmm.
for all the different things that have been announced through for the Massiverse. But
Yeah.
just this month, I think what you announced that you're doing the Spider-Verse versus Venomverse for Marvel. You're doing
Yeah.
Immortal Legend for Batman. I guess
Hmm.
how do you go about prioritizing or picking your projects? And like, how do you make time for everything? Like, is there any, I guess, tools or
Yeah.
secrets of the trade that you've had to like, fine tune throughout the years?
No, I mean, I definitely, one of my superpowers has always been being able to juggle a million things. I mean, again, remember, I come out of like independent filmmaking, and like, if you want to do something, you just have to do it, and figure out a way to do it. And so, um, you know, I definitely have some ADHD there, as well. But I don't know. I mean, I have really, really great collaborators. Is the truth. I mean, I co-write a lot more these days. Joe Clark co-writes on Radiant Black with me. Matt Groom and I co-write Spider-Verse versus Venomverse, as well as Immortal Legend Batman.
Okay.
Um, and so that's great because it allows me all of the kind of like creative liberties and being able to build this without everything falling on my shoulders, you know. Um, and so yeah, and it you know, creates opportunities like for Matt to do some stuff, and you know, he's in with those editors now as well, and I'm excited because hopefully that leads to more cool stuff, you know, for them together. Um, but no, I mean, mostly it's like I move from fire to fire, and tackle uh I tackle whichever one is burning the hottest at the moment first.
Yeah, I've heard you talk that tracks because I've heard you talk about how I think you've said like collaboration is your favorite part about making comics and getting to work
Yeah.
with the team that you've got. And it sounds like in every interview you're always bigging up and showing love to your team and everyone that helps you with like Black Market Narrative and all the different
Hmm.
Massiverse stuff. Does that and then I also understand that you used to play like sports in high school. I think you basketball, I think tennis, you almost went like to college for tennis. I guess is that where but I guess that collaborative teamwork spirit comes from?
Yeah, I think it's from a few places, but definitely in when I was in 8th grade and I made the school, my junior high's like this official school basketball team. It was really, really competitive, and the program was really strong for many years. So when I made the team, that was the first time that I was on a real team with like a really strong leader, and everyone finding their roles and personalities within it all. And like I was a little more on the outs with that because I didn't play like much. I was on the bench a lot. Um, but I responded to what it's like to build that kind of environment where it is a group and it's all of everyone kind of together. And that coupled with like, again, filmmaking, you know, making these projects, and it's like you rally people with your excitement and enthusiasm. You rally them to, you know, putting in time and energy to help bring something to life. And it's like it's it's I don't know, it's a lot of fun. So that is the part that I think there's it comes out of sports, sure, but also like I grew up playing in bands. I was a trumpet player until I was like 25. Like, so I've played in all and played around in all sorts of different, I guess, collaborative environments. And in particular, the types of films that I like to make, which tend to be a little bit, even as short films, they're larger in scale. They tend to require larger crews and, you know, really skilled crews in order to execute at the production level that we're talking about. And so you have to know how to work well with others. And then working with actors is a whole other skill on top of that. You have to know how
Yeah.
to speak actor language, and be whatever that actor needs. And every actor needs something different with their collaborator and, their director. So, yeah, that's just kind of stuff I've always kind of done, I guess. And so now it's really carrying over into comics because we have this, Black Market Narrative is set up as, it's a creative studio, but I describe it as a creative collective studio because it is this kind of merging of a lot of different types, a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life and a lot of different disciplines as we make things in new and different ways.
Speaking about filmmaking, I read that you
Mm-hmm.
interned for the legendary Richard Donner, like shortly
Yeah.
after getting out of college, and that was like really kind of helped you get your foot in the door. I guess
Mm-hmm.
looking back on that time, what do you think? What would you say was like the most important lesson that you learned from like your time working underneath him that maybe you still carry with you to this day?
Um, I'd say probably the biggest thing. So it was a quote. He said it. I mean, he and I talked about it, but he also said it for his good friend, who was also my mentor, Tom Mankiewicz's book, which was that like 95% of directing was casting. And I think that applies to so many things, even outside of film and actors and acting. But what it really means is like putting the right people in the right positions. Putting the right people in the positions is what gets you the best work. And so it's like you have to have an eye for the right people and kind of like the qualities that you think make someone good for the position you're putting them in. But like you really have to like, yeah, it's just so much of it is about that. It's just putting in people in positions to succeed, and like not putting people in on projects, for example, that can't deliver in the amount of time that you have, or won't be able to work with this other collaborator, or whatever. So I think it's again, it comes down to probably people. Actually, I have a cool poster here. I was trying to see if I can unmount my camera. Hold on one second.
Oh yeah, let's do it. A little tour of the Higgins studio. Oh wow. Oh man, classic poster. What is that?
So
You can believe a man can fly. Yeah, the classic. You'll believe a man can fly poster.
so that poster was given to me by Tom Mankiewicz. He'd had it for, I believe, like 30 years or something. And after Tom passed away, I reached back out and asked if Donner would sign it for me, because I never had Tom sign it. And so Dick wrote, to Kyle, hope to sign your DGA card, Richard Dick
Wow,
Donner, which is awesome. Yeah.
wow, that's great, man. That's awesome. And I feel like since we're on the topic of kind of humble beginnings and breaking into the industry, Kyle, what words or story or what memories come to mind when I say Captain America, Theater of War, Prisoners of Duty? Because according to your wiki, this is the earliest comic book credit that I could find. So this Captain America one shot from
What comes to
2001.
mind?
Yeah.
That's a long title. That's probably the
So
number
definitely
one
a
thing that comes
mouthful.
to mind.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's
a
a long
mouthful.
title, yeah. No, that was my first comic book. That was after I directed The League, which was my college film. Um, Eric White, who had designed all the characters, he was a cartoonist. He sent out an email to like 200 people, everyone he knew in film, TV, and comics, telling them about this short and giving them the link and telling them to reach out if they liked it. And so that one of the first people who emailed me was Joe Quesada, who was the editor in chief of Marvel at the time. And so Joe was really, really complimentary about what we had done and what we were doing. And, basically that started a conversation and then a relationship where I was pitching to Marvel for, about a year and a half before landing an issue of Captain America. But yeah, that was technically my first comic I ever wrote.
I guess when's the last time you revisited this story?
Oh, it's been a long time. I might have one sitting over here actually on my spinner rack, but no, I haven't read it lately. Why?
I just out of curiosity, I always like to kind of like see if I'm always curious if like comic creators ever go back to their earlier work and see if there's anything like they can glean from it. Or I know it's probably like like me going back to like episode 1 of this podcast, but it's probably like super cringe, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I would ever put this out.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I don't really. I'll revisit things once in a while. Like I'll get when a collection shows up at my door, like a new collection for something. I'll inevitably flip through the book and like reread different sections and stuff, and you remember making it the first time and remember weird details about it all in the process. So I'll do that. Yeah, but beyond that, no, I don't usually. I mean, there's not much to really. I have to revisit my stuff so frequently on Radiant Black, just for continuity reasons, to figure out like, wait, how did we do this 2 years ago? We've been going long enough now. This is actually the longest I've ever been on a book. All of my other runs tended to be about 3 years. Was my longest on Nightwing and Power Rangers. So those were both 3-year runs. So,
and I think that's really impressive as someone that picked up Radiant Black issue 1 like the day it came out, what, February 2021 is
February 10th, 2021.
There we go. It's impressive to know that it's still ongoing, because I think it's safe to say there isn't a lot of original superhero comics that go past. I mean, like, I'd say like 8 is kind of conservative, but I'd say like 12. So the fact that you guys at the time of this recording, I think issue 33 or 34 will be out. I think to pull back a little bit, I think it's even safe to say that micro superhero universes seem to be like a big thing now. I mean, if we don't even need to look at like the big two, what Marvel's doing for their Ultimate line or DC with their Absolute line. I mean, we could look at like Dark Horse, what they're doing with Minor Threats and that universe being built out, or Skybound with the Energon universe, and then obviously we've got the Massiverse. And I won't say that like isolated super universes are not like a new thing. They've been around for a long time, but it does feel like Radiant Black was at the forefront of that, of what we're seeing now. And I guess I'm curious to hear, Kyle, like, why do you think it's a great time for like these type of stories? Like, are people looking for these superhero stories consciously or unconsciously? Like, do you think there's something in the air?
That's a good question. I mean, part of what's frustrating for me is that I still don't feel like enough people are looking for these stories currently. And the books that are selling well right now from Marvel and DC are books that they're doing. I'm not saying they're not good books or anything like that, but they tend to be a bit familiar. And you'll see like really, really big numbers on that stuff. And it's a little, well, I don't want to say it's frustrating, but like I would say to your question that, I don't think enough people actually are reading this stuff and checking it out. But the fact that we are able to support it all does mean that there are more people coming to find it. And I think that a reason for that is because every generation kind of goes through this, realizing and feeling at a certain point, you become very aware of the churn of like monthly superhero comics and the illusion of change and like things resetting. And now, so like I've now gone through 3 of them, it feels like. And I do think there's something that's a little bit broken in the Marvel and DC mechanism of making you feel like the illusion and perception of continually moving story, like a continuing story. And so like this is a conversation we have all the time on our side, which is like we don't have any limitations. And I feel a responsibility, if we're going to not only be doing a creator-owned book in 2025, but a creator-owned superhero book, that it be living to the promise of its premise and like doing things that only it can do, because we don't have the same type of like rigidness at a Marvel and DC, or even a like, well, you can't break the toys. You have to make sure they go back in the toy box exactly as you found them. Like, we don't have that either because it's all original. But yeah, it would be nice if more people, and I don't mean to make it sound like people aren't reading our books, because they are, but I just mean in the grand scheme of like, you know, how many Batman books there are out there. And I say this as someone who's writing Batman right now. Like, again, it's not, there's no shade. It's just like, try more indie stuff would be my, my mantra, especially if you want cool, different, unique storytelling.
I totally agree. I think what all those companies, what Massiverse is doing with creating their own indie superheroes, is some of the best books out. I'll never forget. I mean, if you go back to any episode I probably put out in 2021, 2022, I've gone on record saying like Radiant Black is one of the most exciting new superhero books out there, and I think a lot of that lends itself to the honesty that comes across in that comic book, the vulnerability of the heroes, how relatable they are, and no pun intended, all the massively cool stuff that you guys are doing, like the ancillary media that's around it. It feels really fresh. And I guess for anyone that maybe isn't, that is just new to Radiant Black, I guess could you take us back to, I guess, February 2021 and maybe before that? Like, where did the idea for Radiant Black come from? Like, what was the inception of it? Because as I kind of remember it, I remember being sold on it by, it was probably either a friend or my comic shop guy. He was like, "Hey, Kyle Higgins, I know that you're not reading Power Rangers, but he's doing his own thing with his own superheroes. This is kind of like that, but it's his own thing." And I'll admit, the way I was selling, friends on Radiant Black. I was using kind of like movie comparisons. I'm like, "Yo, this is like Juice meets Chronicle meets Interstellar." It's like it's kind of all of these things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've never heard that mashup before. I like that.
I think a Juice because it's like the two friends that are kind of always butting heads, and I think Chronicle and Interstellar speak for itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the genesis of it comes from a few different places, and then there was this moment where everything kind of coalesced. And so I had left Power Rangers, and I was working on, before I left, we were working on this live action digital series that would be like in the world of the Coinless, and like it'd be like the Lord Draken, like in that kind of world and stuff. And it looked like it was going really well. And then with Saban and everything, and then Hasbro bought the brand like for $500 million like overnight. And so everything ended up getting like killed. And so I started playing around with the idea of just like, okay, in the spirit of the world of the Coinless, what is something kind of like dystopian that I could kind of build maybe as a digital series vehicle? Maybe, I wasn't sure, but initially it was thinking like, oh, well, maybe we could do like kind of our own digital series, and some of the people involved, we could just do this thing. And then very quickly it became clear. I was like, who's going to buy this? Like, this is not like, it's not based on anything. Like, it would still be a high budget for this kind of format. I'm going to play around with this in comics, because what I had come up with was this world. The working title was just called Vanguard, but then the iconography were these miniature black holes called Radiance, and then the title became Radiant Black. And so it was just going to be this 6-issue comic thing that was kind of in this post-dystopian. It's like 200 years after some form of like Power Ranger types would have saved the world, and it's telling that kind of story, right? And while that's going on, I was up for a book at DC. One of my favorite editors asked me to pitch on a concept, and what I had come up with basically involved a late 20s, early 30s year old getting laid off from Wayne Enterprises and having to move back in with his parents in like the Gotham suburbs. And I didn't ever end up pitching the book, because what the book needed to be, I just didn't feel like I was the right guy for it, especially at that point. But I liked that concept, that hook that I'd come up with. It felt like, oh, there's something there. Like, I've lived in LA now. This summer makes it 20 years since I moved out here from Illinois. And, I've watched plenty of friends move back who were out here. I went back and stayed with my family for like 3 months in between apartments and stuff like that a couple years ago, and after a bad breakup. And so it was just like, oh, that feels timely. It feels like some of the things going on, right now, especially if you're my age, and realizing like, oh shit, like this whole career thing is not exactly what they promised us was going to be there. Um, so all that was kind of like swirling. And then Eric Stevenson asked me if he's the publisher at Image, if I'd ever considered putting together an original superhero. And I said, well, I asked him what he meant. And he said, well, like, not like a Batman or Superman analog, but like something like right now, like original. Like think of it as like optimistic sci-fi, if that's easier to get your head around. And I was like, well, I would kill to do something like that, but I didn't think there'd be a market for it. And he told me he thought there would be, and walked me through some stuff. And he told me to let anyone else, creator wise, I thought would be a good fit to know like this was an opportunity. He wanted to put an emphasis on like the Image superhero universe again. And so I told him, I was like, well, look, I've got this Radiant Black thing that we were going to do, remember? But like, what if I do it straight? What if I do it in 2021 or 2020? And we do it as a really contemporary right now superhero book. And I use the iconography and the name from that other pitch. And then I play with that idea of like, the book's not about me, but there's a lot of me in the book. And so it's me writing about a lot of my fears and things like that. And so it's like, all right, like I want to design this. You can't pick your hits, but like, let's see if we can design this in a way where if it works, I can keep going with it. It can grow with me as a creator. And so that really kicked off what became the book. And then I reached out to Ryan Parrott immediately and pitched him the idea. Matt Groom was already working on Infernal Girl Red, and I was the editor on it. We were looking for an artist still, and we ended up finding the Erica D'Urso after that. And then the styles all lined up, and it was like, guys, we should do this. Like, we should actually do this as a little initiative, like a little universe. And so that's how the Massiverse kind of came together.
I've personally heard you tell the story a few times across other interviews, and I still think it's cool to hear how, just thinking Radiant Black and the Massiverse is an accumulation of, like the Batman, like this kind of like a Batman script you had, but also like coming off of Power Rangers. So like these stories that like got your name to like, where it's at now, but then also like the personal aspect. And I think it comes through in the comic, man. That's something I vividly remember reading, like that first couple, like 6 issues, was just how personable it was and how timely it felt. Because, we're talking February 2021, right? Like prime in the middle of like lockdown. People are losing their jobs. I had friends like moving back to Jax after like trying to go out and find a career. So I felt like it was a perfect accumulation of all these like things going on in the world. And to your point, it is like a really good contemporary superhero story. And I think I became an even bigger fan when I started to see like how you would maximize not only the medium of comic books, but I think it was like issue 11 when you guys did the Blacklight issue that
Issue 10.
absolutely issue 10, thank you, which absolutely like blew my mind. I mean, I think I've seen Blacklight utilized in comic books, but something about it being so integral to the story and natural with it. And then obviously all the other really cool things going on, which leads me to my next question. A long-winded way of setting this up, but it seems that podcast, and to a larger extent, like digital media, seems to play like a really important role in the Massiverse, both in universe and in the real world. I mean, there's a 10-episode podcast of No One that's on Spotify, which has got fucking Patton Oswalt on it, which is great. You got the Radiant Black podcast. You got the audiobook that's coming out. You've got like secret QR codes and trades and things like that. And I selfishly want to ask, since big podcast fan over here, Kyle, what was your first conscious exposure to podcasts? Like, do you remember the first one that you listened to that got you hooked? Like, what are some of your favorites?
Oh, geez. No, I can't really think of any in particular. I mean, I was actually, in a weird way, I was like making my own podcasts like many years ago. I used to rip the the director's commentary tracks off of DVDs and Blu-rays and turn that into an MP3 and put it on my mini disc player or my iPod so that I could listen to director's commentaries like while I drove and stuff. But I used to listen to Script Notes a lot, the John August and Craig Mazin podcast about screenwriting. I listen to a lot of podcasts on the Chicago Bears and sports. I listen to some comics podcasts. Certainly David Harper.
Yeah, big shout out to
It's
David.
wonderful sketched. Yeah. Off panel. What else do I listen to?
I guess what was the motivation to think outside of just comic books, to like, use podcasts and then, create a YouTube channel for Massiveverse where you guys are, making animated shorts to coincide with the comic books. I guess where does that idea come from?
Well, it's twofold or threefold. The first is that it's all stuff I like doing. So it's easy to get excited to make the extra stuff because it's all in formats that I personally enjoy. It's also in formats that lend themselves to lower budget storytelling, but higher immersion experiences. And so audio in particular, if you could find a way, it has to work with the story and the concept, but in the case of No One, that particular project, which has, it's the true crime superhero mystery in our line, it felt like a true crime podcast a la, the Sarah Koenig Serial podcast from about 10 years ago. That felt like something that made sense within the concept. It felt resonant with it. And so it, for me, expands the possibilities of storytelling. And immersion, again, is such a big thing for us. And the immersion is the other reason why, I guess the third component of why we do that kind of stuff. And it's that, like, feeling like there's some magic still in the world to some extent. And like that's something that I like strive for. The idea of like trying to capture that experience of being a fan that I grew up having when things felt fun to some extent and exciting. And there were promos on, Fox Kids every week and every day for this week or today on Batman, the animated series, there was viral marketing like Cloverfield and The Dark Knight and stuff like that, And I just feel like so much of what we are riffing on is the same tenets that Marvel was kind of defined by in the 1960s, which was, we are the universe that is the world outside your window. And for a variety of reasons, Marvel can't really be that anymore, but we are a small, newer entity that is doing superhero stories that are right outside your window. And a part of communicating in a modern world is by using, the tools and the platforms that people are communicating on, that they are consuming their storytelling on, whether it be reading the news or entertainment, even your newsletter, you're reading that on your phone most of the time. So designing stuff that can actually be integrated into, people's current routines for how they're consuming information felt like an extra level, like an extra way to reflect the world outside your window in these fictional, these fictional stories that we tell.
I'll never forget going to the shop one day, and my comic shop guy named Jonathan, who was a huge, I think he still is, a huge Radiant Black fan. Me and him would like, hey, did you read the new issue? Yeah, I read the new issue. Did you pick this up? Well, one day I walked into the shop and he had a Radiant Black enamel pin. And I was like, yo, where'd you get that from? I was like, they got merch now? He's like, dude, if you in the back of whatever issue was, there's a QR code. It leads you to a secret shop. And, they sold out. And so ever since then, I'll, if I pick up an issue, I'll flip to the back, try to find the QR code. But I was listening to an interview, speaking about David, that you did with him, and ended up learning that you guys also sold like bath bombs, and there's all this elaborate things that you do with Radiant Black. I guess, in your opinion, what do you think is the most I guess, boldest, marketing move or Easter egg that you guys have done with the Massiverse that you're really proud of?
I'd say there's probably two. The first is the Radiant Black versus Blaze secret cartoon that we made with Will Friedle voicing Radiant Black. It's through a QR code in issue 50. Have you seen that one?
I literally watched it right before we
Yeah,
jumped on
yeah.
with you. That was awesome. It was like 5 minutes,
And
like
then
easy watch, but awesome.
yeah. And then the second one is probably the No One, like the announcement of the movie that we're making, the feature film. And so shooting that live action trailer, and I cut that myself as well, and then doing all the posts on it and turning it around in time to drop it at San Diego Comic-Con was pretty cool. Trying to think what else. We've done music. We did a full orchestral score for issue number 3 with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra. So that video's out there. That was a lot of fun. And the blacklight stuff's always really cool. So, but yeah, I'd probably have to go with the cartoon and then maybe the live action trailer. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm most excited for now is the announcement of this Radiant Black audiobook, which is supposed to adapt the first volume of said series. You've got some, I mean, can you think of a better cast to cast the two main characters, Nathan and Marshall? You've got Ryder Strong voicing Nathan Burnett. I'm sorry, Rider Strong voicing Nathan, and Will Friedle voicing Marshall, your two main characters in Radiant Black. Holy 90s childhood Batman. Could you pick two better people? I guess let me take a pause right here. I want to know how
Sure.
Ryder and Will got involved. But for anyone that's curious, this audiobook, there's as far as I understand, there's no release date just yet, but you're adapting volume 1. And I understand this will be like the first, what is it? It'll be the first time an image comic has been adapted in an audio form of this level. I guess, where did the inception of this audiobook come from? And how did you get Ryder Strong and Will Friedle,
Yeah.
Boy Meets World, involved? I mean, come on.
So again, this was an Eric Stevenson idea. This was an Image idea. Lorelei Bunches, who runs digital at Image, reached out to me and said that she and Eric had been talking about the idea of exploring more in the audiobook space, which is a growing space, and there's not as much content in it as you might think, and there's very little comic book content. And I was already doing the No One podcast, but it was, it's a scripted audio series, so it's a full cast voice production. And so I immediately came to mind to them as like, you should see if Kyle would get this, And it took me half a second, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, of course. And then from there, I only know how to do things one way, which is like, well, what's the coolest version of this, And the coolest version to me was, we do this as a full voice cast, and we'd already made jokes and had Will Friedle voice Radiant Black for these like promo audio spots that we did on social media. And then again for the big Radiant Black versus Blaze cartoon, and Will's in the book as himself. So it's like, well, Will has to voice Marshall for this. And so then it becomes like, okay, well, who's Nathan? And I didn't know Ryder, but I knew Ryder's work, certainly. I grew up on Boy Meets World. We're all very close in age. I think they're a few years older than me. But the idea that like, it's also really important in an audiobook to have, you need to really differentiate the voices. And I felt like having a little bit of I don't want to say Ryder has a huskier voice, but it's like, it's a different timbre than what Will has. And I was like, oh, I think that's gonna work really, really nicely. And then the irony is like, Will introduced Ryder and me, and he and I have become really good friends at this point. And like, he's a super talented writer director, so like, we're working on a bunch of stuff together, and so this has just been like a blast. I've recorded Melissa Navia as Radiant Pink and Lauren Lester as Nathan's dad, Mr. Burnett. And then Ryder has done all of his stuff except for the scenes with Nathan and Marshall, because we're going to record Will and Ryder together for those. Yeah.
Can I also say you've got one of my favorite online comedians among this cast, Troy Baker as Shift. That dude's
Yeah,
voice is, I mean, just alone his voice is awesome. He got a way of delivery, and I love the voice. I love the casting.
you can ask. So Shift is my girlfriend's favorite character, and you could ask her. Troy Baker was the first name. Like that was my dream casting
Oh, it's
choice
cool.
from day one. It just felt like the perfect. She calls Shift hot green guy because he is that like that anti-hero with abs that are too good to be real.
Yeah.
But also like dangerous, but women kind of want to save him and
Hmm.
definitely want to sleep with him. And I'm just like, fuck, man. Troy has that. Troy will nail that. Troy would
For
absolutely
sure.
kill that. And so, fortunately, it was a very easy ask. He could not have been more generous with his agreeing to voice Shift as quickly as he did. So, we haven't recorded him yet, but very soon. So,
So
yeah.
I guess what are you guys dropping everything, all episodes at once? Is it going to be a weekly release? Like, what is the rough timeline? It still sounds like you're still doing recordings. There's probably a bunch
Yeah,
of posts.
oh yeah. We were targeting May, but that's not going to happen now.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
I mean, the reality is that the priority is keeping Radiant Black and Rogue Sun the books on
Hmm.
time and monthly, and that's a lot of work. On top of there's about 6 other projects behind the scenes that people don't know about, that we're also managing. So there's a lot going on to keep everything running.
Hmm.
But then, um, with the audiobook, so I'm directing it all. And so there's just a bunch. There's still a few parts that we're casting. There's still a few, 1 or 2 roles that we haven't announced that I'm locking down still. But the plan is for all of volume 1 to release all at once. And it'll be through Audible, it'll be through wherever you can buy your audiobooks. I believe on the Amazon side, that Audible version of Volume 1 will also link with the trade paperback version of Volume 1 as just another edition, which is
Nice.
awesome
Yeah.
because that helps with sales data and
Hmm.
history, and to hopefully elevate the audiobook. But yeah, for those who haven't figured it out by now, the audiobook is a full voice cast doing Radiant Black Volume 1. The intention is to do more beyond that, but we're just focusing on this first one right now. Um, and yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff we're doing behind the scenes on the marketing and PR front for when the time comes for that I think people will get a kick out of too.
I think cool is an understatement, man. You got me as an audio guy myself. I'm very excited for the announcement and to hear that in action. And I want to say I'll include a link, listeners, to a Radiant Black recap that is voiced
Oh,
by
yeah.
Will Friedle and Rider Strong. Which, if you haven't, been keeping up with the comic book series, it's 90 seconds, and you get a little taste of them playing the 2 main characters. It's awesome. I was watching it before we hopped on, but Kyle, I think what I appreciated hearing you say though is that you're still keeping among all this really cool, podcast, animated short, a movie, etc. That you're still keeping the comic book at the forefront and the main focus. And I think that's what I enjoy about the Massiverse is that you've got all these other rabbit holes that you can go down, all these other forms of entertainment that you can consume to like, kind of enrich, the world that you guys are building, but you necessarily don't have to. If you just want to focus on the comic book, you still get a full story. So I guess I'm curious to hear like why comic books? Like why? What is it about the medium of comic books that is the perfect vehicle for these stories? Considering that you've got experience in all these other mediums as well.
Well, I think it's I think it's for a few reasons. The first is it's where I have the most experience. It's where I have the biggest name and the most ability to get things made. Um, I also just love the format and the medium, and I think that, and I've said this plenty publicly before. I think that if you're working in a particular medium, you should be trying to do things that can only be achieved in that medium, kind of as much as possible, or at least that's what I try to do where it makes sense. And so comics, there are so many things you can do in comics that you can't do anywhere else. And that's why we play with the format as much as we do and try to innovate within it. Sequential storytelling is the purest form of storytelling outside of a novel. Like, it's such a direct laser between you and the reader. You the storyteller, and you the reader in this instance. And I think that there's a purity there that is hard to replicate or to even find anything in the ballpark of, because every other medium that you just mentioned there requires more people, more money, and more approval. And I'm much more interested at this point in both my career but my life in working in the fields where I can actually make things consistently and put them out than I am with waiting for the right opportunity to do the big TV show version that may or may not ever come. As somebody who made a really big movie in college, got a lot of attention, and then stopped making movies because he didn't want to make anything unless it was at the same level as the thing that put him kind of on the map. I can tell you it's a really lonely way to be a filmmaker, because you're not making movies. You're just constantly waiting. And so I don't want to do that anymore. And, the fact that the No One project is leading to my first feature directing opportunity is not a coincidence, So it's more about finding the mediums that you enjoy, that you feel confident in your ability to do interesting things in, and that are financially viable in a way that won't bankrupt you as you try to tell stories and build out your universe or your library.
Great. That was well said. Well said. Hearing you say, comic books being a direct laser to the readers and such, actually brings me to my favorite segment of any time I get to do an interview is being able to bridge the gap between creator and comic shop and reader as well. And I like to call this segment the short box friends and family part of the show. So I reached out to a couple friends who are fans of yours and asked for any questions, and I got two fantastic questions. The first one being from my comic shop guy, the guy that owns the comic shop that I go to, Ben Kingsbury of Gotham City Limit. I told him I'd have you on the show, and he was very excited because you did something with the Massiverse, did something in January that just made him very proud to own a comic shop. So I'm going to play his voicemail, and you get to hear from him directly. Here we go.
Okay.
Hey, Kyle, Ben K, Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville, Florida here. Thanks so much for taking some time for me. Whenever anybody ever asks, what's the number one thing I would do in comics? I always say I would add recaps. That's why when your free Radiant Black, the story so far, recap issue came out, I was a little blown away. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about, but even better. I mean, I wish I had more of it. It was a brilliant move. We added a number of pull customers and new readers, and it really exposed people to a universe maybe they hadn't gotten onto when it started in 2021. So I got a two-part question for you. What inspired you to create this free recap? And more importantly, how did you decide what key moments to add to capture the heart of what Radiant Black is? I'll leave you to answer. Thanks again so much for creating amazing content. We literally couldn't do it without you. And remember, Short Box Nation, we'll always take it to the limit.
Big shout outs to Ben. I told Ben he can't be coming for my job. I got one job, and that's to ask good questions to creators. And he's over here asking really good questions. Yeah.
That is a good question. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Ben. And I'm really, really glad that the recap special landed in such a positive way with you guys. For anyone who doesn't know but is seeing this, what Ben's referring to is a special 16-page comic that we put together called Radiant Black, the story so far. And inside it is a full recap of the events of issues 1 through 30.5 of Radiant Black, told in a series of 3 panel pages, essentially. And this comes from a couple different places. First and foremost, it comes from the fact that we are now doing something that very few books are currently doing, which is we are trying to get people interested in a book above issue number 30. And that's a really hard thing to do in this market, and it's especially hard to do with an independent book. It's equally as hard to get retailers interested in a book above issue number 30. So the conversations I had with Eric Stevenson and the great people at Image about different things we could consider led to a few different things that we ended up employing. And one of them was this Story So Far recap. And this was Eric's idea, coming out of, Marvel used to do these in the 80s with different storylines. And so we figured out with a printer, we got a good deal on this. And then Michael and I went through and picked the moments. And how did we pick the moments? It all comes down to Nathan and Marshall, and it's this book is their story. It's the story of these two best friends and their relationship. So as long as you anchor everything through their relationship, it's easy to find the key moments to tell, an effective recap story. And then in the end, we also included ISBN numbers for all of the trade paperbacks currently out, a tease of some things to come in 2025, and then product information for issue 31, which kicked off the rebuild era. And then we also did a big animated version of it that you were talking about before with Will Friedle and Rider Strong, and have made those videos available to retailers, as well as our upcoming issue promos that we cut for each issue as well.
That was a great answer. You know what, Kyle? I just had an idea. I might cut this next question into the intro because I think this might be helpful. So bear with me here. Kyle, let's set the stage really quick for anyone that maybe is oblivious to Radiant Black. It is up to, by the time this episode comes out, issue 34 will be coming out May 28th. I'll have this episode out before then. It'll be smack dab in the middle of this new rebuild arc. And I'm curious, 34 issues in, almost 3 years of Radiant Black. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how your elevator pitch for Radiant Black is now compared to maybe when you first started. What is the elevator pitch for Radiant Black for someone that is brand new that's listening to this right now?
So it's a very contemporary superhero book about two disillusioned millennials navigating failed dreams and crippling credit card debt with the help of miniature black holes and existential giant robots.
10 out of 10. Damn, I could have even been more succinct. The only thing more succinct than that was probably the Story So Far one shot that you put out, which, by the way, succinct, the definition of succinct.
Well, we joke that I whenever people come up to my table, I get a lot of Power Ranger fans and readers, mm-hmm. and some of them have heard of Radiant Black and never tried it. Others have never heard of it at all. And so depending on who I'm talking to about the book, I will, if they like Power Rangers, I will often joke that it's like Power Rangers with adult problems. And then when I hit them with that, hit them with that first page splash of the bank account balance and the credit card debt,
yeah,
and then them moving back home by page 4 with their parents, they get it. Everyone kind of is like, yeah. Oh, okay, I understand. Yeah, real problems. Yes, got it.
And I want to emphasize too, because I feel like even I find myself sometimes really just selling like the just how real it is, how relatable it is. I'm not gonna say like depressing, but it's like it deals with some real world stuff. I also want to emphasize too, I think I need to remind myself too, that there's a lot of cool shit that goes on. The cool superhero stuff. I mean, the Catalyst War was like epic. It spanned, different stories. You did a really cool, you guys did a really ambitious thing in that story where you're telling two different timelines at the same time, where it's like issue 37, but then it would be 37.5. Like, it's a very ambitious superhero comic book for anyone that is into superhero stuff and wants something fresh. Highly recommended. With that being said, let me move on to my second question that I got from a big fan of yours. He's a patron of the show, so I'm going to show him some love. This next question
Okay.
comes from Mac Jacobson. He wrote in and said, I'm a huge Kyle Higgins fan. This is awesome that he's on the show. The question I got, is there any heroes or villains you would love to write a story for, but haven't had the chance yet? Keep up the fantastic work on Radiant Black. I mean, how is a story still so good after all these issues? It must have a fantastic writer.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. Characters that I would love to do something with but haven't. Is that the question? Well, the biggest are the Ninja Turtles. Like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would be my
God, that's so perfect. I can see it now.
Yeah, that's the last one that I haven't been. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to work on kind of all my favorite properties over the years in one way or another. Spider-Man right now, it's not a full proper run on Spider-Man, but it's still like we're touching like all of the Spider-Man in the Marvel universes. So it's cool. It's like scratching that itch, like because I hadn't really done anything with Spider-Man. But the Ninja Turtles, yeah, I think now the Ninja Turtles are the last big piece. So it's got to be the right fit and it's got to be the right situation. And I think the importance to me or significance of working on other established characters is less for me now than it was earlier in my career. And so if it happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm okay,
Yeah.
And I feel like that with Marvel and DC stuff as well. Like, it's just got to be like, it's got to be an exciting opportunity, and it's got to be like, yeah, it's just got to be like, it's got to be an exciting enough proper project for me to want to go back and work on, in other sandboxes. But those do come up from time to time, like this Immortal Legend Batman project. Sorry, literally as I was talking, we were getting an email of new pages on Immortal Legend Batman, and they are pretty awesome.
I was just about to find a way to work that in because I was about to ask, what was the? I mean, is the definition of perfect, excitement level and idea in this Immortal Legend Batman? Because the way I understand the solicitation or the announcement, you're combining, traditional superhero storytelling with Japanese tokusatsu, entertainment. I'm like, well, shit, that's got Kyle's name written all over it. I'm seeing the DNA
it's
of.
Funny. So 2 press releases went out, and the first one that went out, we're not quite sure how. Yeah, some wording in it was attributed to me that I didn't say about named moves and tokusatsu and what makes and so I don't know where that came from, other than we have some pitch documents that have a bunch of things in it about explaining tokusatsu and things like that. But all that to say, don't think of it too rigidly.
Okay,
there are named moves for sure, but this is a book that is taking elements of tokusatsu as an influence, but it's also taking elements of Western superhero storytelling, sci-fi space operas, and Westerns, like straight up Westerns. Like the pages I'm looking at right now are very much a Western. But there's also like different influences like Space Sheriff Gavon.
nice.
And so it's a Western, but with a space sheriff kind of. You see where I'm going? Like there's a bunch of different elements that we're kind of bringing in here. But yes, there will also be really cool named Batman moves.
I got a buddy that listens to the show named Corey Torgerson, who might be one of the biggest tokusatsu fans I know. So Corey, if you're listening, I think you're going to really enjoy Immortal Legend Batman, especially from the promo art I've seen with Dan Mora's designs and everything. It's like, yo, you and Dan Mora make some magic, dude. You and Dan Mora are like a match.
We've never worked on a book together somehow.
Not even during the Power Ranger times. Oh, he was on the opposite book, right?
He was on Go-Go.
That's right.
I was so jealous. Wow. With no disrespect to the artists I worked with when Go-Go launched and Dan was drawing it, I was like, what the heck, Daphne? Like, you've got no disrespect to anyone working on this book, but how you have Dan Mora and he's going out and we don't get him on the main book? Oh my gosh.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, but this is exciting. We've been friends for years. but we're only just working together now.
Cool.
So
All right, Kyle, I got one more question for you, and I think I'm going to subvert the question I did have lined up and ask a very selfish one, because I didn't have a chance to bring up, like, I feel like this is a much deeper rabbit hole, but it seems like music plays a big influence in your writing and your career too. I'm thinking like Deep Cuts, the image series you did that kind of, it was an anthology about jazz, which spoke to me highly as a music head, as a record collector, as a guy that had a music podcast. So I guess selfishly, I need to ask, was it working with Kid Cudi, who as a millennial, Kid Cudi, that first album, Man on the Moon, the mixtape, all of that is like, it's part of my DNA. What was it like working with Kid Cudi on Moon Man, the comic book?
great. I mean, Scott is super collaborative, super excitable. He and I have a lot of the same touch points. He's also a massive Ninja Turtles fan.
Hell yeah. Man of taste.
Yeah. For his 40th birthday, he threw this amazing party in LA, and he was kind enough to invite my girlfriend and I to it. And there was a turtle, like the van from the animated show was like parked in the center of the like Beverly Wilshire ballroom. And like he had 4 turtles bring him his birthday cake.
That's
so
cool.
I got him I called in a favor and reached out to Jock, who did this amazing Turtles poster for Mondo years ago, about 10 years ago now. And I have one. I bought it when I was at San Diego that year. And I asked Jock, it's for the first movie. I was like, do you happen to have any left? Do you have any APs or anything? And he did. So I got one of them for Scott for his 40th.
Wow.
But then he turned around and handed me a present for my birthday. I turned 39 last year, and he had bought me a pair of Jordan SBs in pine green, because the 4s.
Is it the Jordan 4? Yeah, the Jordan 4 SBs, the pine greens, because they just came out with the navies this year.
Yeah, and the pine greens look amazing, and it's the green turtle kind of reference of it all. So he's great. So
Kyle, you're also a sneakerhead too, because I think I've seen a few photos of you, and you've got some fresh. I think one photo you had like a fresh pair of ones that were like some baby blues. I'm a sneakerhead too. Any excuse for me to spend money is my weakness.
No, I'm getting that way. It's Scott's fault. It's his fault. Like I told him this. Like, those shoes have sent me down a path. My girlfriend says that they're my girlfriend says they're 10% of my personality now. So, but yeah, you did see. I had some. I mean, I have some like one. I have a bunch of ones, but I just bought a pair of ones the other day. Like, we live fairly close to Cool Kicks in LA, so I was in there the other day, and I've had my eye on the Hyper Royal ones, that kind of like the suede baby blue, and so they had them in my size, and they're pretty cheap, so I picked them up. They're my new favorite shoe. I'll be wearing that with everything.
Ones are my favorite sneakers of all time, but recently, I literally have a storage unit of ones. I can't possibly be like, I have a fuck ton of Jordans, but lately I've been buying lows, Jordan 1 lows. I used to just be like a high.
The Dunks?
No,
the
Dunks and just regular Jordan 1 lows. Like the rookie of the years came out last weekend. Oh my God. This is weird timing. Like, I've been like perusing a sneaker subreddit, and which is lethal if you're a recovering sneakerhead. Now I'm like, oh shit, that came out when?
Just wait, just wait until we do the limited edition shoe collab for Radiant Black.
Fire! I'll be the first one. All right, Kyle. Last question for you. I asked you that question about the Captain America comic book. I guess I did have a question about that, and I just dropped the ball. But thinking back to Kyle Higgins, just breaking in, young you, just breaking into the comic book scene. If you had a time machine and you could go back and give a young you a piece of advice that would go a long way. And I'm really kind of thinking about like the aspiring comic book writers that are listening now that are like, man, I want to be the next Kyle Higgins. I guess what piece of advice would you give to your younger self that would go a long way? Or even just to anyone listening that wants to write comic books and forge their own story?
Well, I think my biggest piece of advice is probably more craft, but business, like industry related than anything, which is, um, I mean, it's a very common piece of advice to try to give someone newer or younger, which is like to be patient, like essentially. But it has more to do with like letting things play out. And sometimes something will seem to be a really big problem and it might not actually be one, or it might be a really big problem, but like there are so many solutions. There are so many story avenue solutions. Like if we're talking about notes, for example, or, you know, politics within a job, or certain editors or publishers or things like that. There was something that happened last week that was potentially a really big problem on something we were doing, and it was this moment of like, okay, well, I'm literally going to sleep on this, and like I'm just gonna trust and let this play out over a few days. And it did, and it ended up in a situation that was then, you know, workable, that we all were able to come at it to. But I think, especially when I was starting out, you're equal parts insecure, you're self-conscious, you are trying to figure out how to do this at a high level consistently, much less, well, just you're figuring out how to do it at a high level, much less how to do it consistently. And then you're also navigating like politics and professional dynamics and things like that. You're going to make mistakes. But I think you just have to you have to respect the process. And I say this all the time, but the process usually is that it sucks until it doesn't, you know, and you just have to respect that that's what it takes. And sometimes you can't see how many more rungs there are on that ladder, but you have to just keep climbing, no matter how kind of, you know, frustrating it can get. But that's just the process. So things happen when they are supposed to, and when you're ready for them. And if something doesn't happen, then you either weren't ready for it, or it means when something else equal comes back around, you're going to be double ready for it and be able to crush it, you know?
Well said. Trust the process. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that being said, ladies and gents, this is the Short Box Podcast. We just finished talking to Kyle Higgins about Radiant Black, all the exciting things coming to the Massiverse, from audiobooks to animated shorts to films, and obviously more comics. Be sure to follow Kyle on social media, as well as the official Massiverse website. I'll have links to all of that in this episode show notes. Take a look, give a follow. Kyle, you've been great. Any parting words or shameless plug before we wrap up?
No, I think that's everything. Check out the Massiverse. You can subscribe for our newsletter. It's for free at blackmarket.la. That's where you can stay up to date on all the latest stuff we're doing, the announcements on the movie, behind the scenes stuff on the movie and the audiobook, and even some exclusive content coming up that we're going to be running through the newsletter. So more on that in a little bit. But you can head to blackmarket.la right now to find the sign up link there.
That's what I love to hear. All I ask is when you guys do announce the exclusive shoe drop and collabo, keep your boy in mind. All right, I wear a size 10 and a half.
Oh, what's 10 and a half? Oh, I am too. You know what? I was wearing a 10 up until I bought these Hyper Royals, and they only had a 10 and a half because they're used.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? My feet, I hadn't even been realizing it. They were hurting so much in the 10s because I've had 6 knee surgeries in 6 years, so I wear like insoles and everything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, these are really hurting. And then I realized, like, I bet I need to half size up. and the 10 and a halves did it. So now I'm like,
perfect.
Shit, I got to get rid of these 10s I got, and I got to find 10 and a halves now for a bunch of these.
Yeah.
But the SB4s are fine. Those will make work.
There we go. I love to hear it. So, Kyle, I would love to have you back on maybe later on when Immortal Legend of Batman comes out. I feel like there's plenty of it for us to talk about, but best of luck with everything you got going on Massiverse. Huge fan and excited to see what y'all guys do.